Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our webinar this evening. Just a quick note as we get started here that the webinar is being recorded. So you'll have gotten that message when you joined the webinar, but just to, again, reinforce that the webinar is being recorded and will be posted after it is concluded this evening. Just as we kind of get started and start moving into things. So just a friendly reminder to everybody to please keep themselves muted through the course of the webinar. We do have a question and answers period at the end of the webinar where we will give everybody the opportunity to type a question or raise your virtual hand and ask a question. And we'll address those then. And if you just want to like note something down in the chat, you're welcome to do that during the course of the webinar, and we will address it at the end of the webinar. So thank you so much for joining us this evening for understanding the benefits of energy efficient housing. Our webinar team this evening is myself. My name is Megan. I am the project relations with TQ Construction. We have our lovely guest with us, Elisabeth. She is the founder of CarbonWise. She is our energy expert this evening. And then we also have Judith with us, who is a member of TQ's administration team, and she is helping us facilitate the webinar this evening. She is running everything kind of in the background, making sure people get admitted, monitoring questions as they come up. It's very difficult for one person to do it all if you're both presenting and running a webinar. So Judith is very integral to this process this evening. So I'm just going to dive in. So for those of you who have attended our webinars in the past, you'll probably be pretty familiar with the format. These are our general topics that we'll be running through this evening, what kind of professionals that you might see to be involved, what does energy efficiency encompass? George, would you mind just muting yourself as well as Ange too? Thank you guys. So yeah, so what does energy efficiency encompass? What is required now by code, by the current requirements, and what are some common methods of meeting those requirements? Some requirements that are coming, what kind of things that are considered kind of above and beyond in terms of like the immediate future and things that some homeowners choose to take on in their homes and why. How does it benefit homeowners? Because there's often I see people struggling with, okay, I understand that I have to do all of these things, but how does it benefit our family and our home? And then also some financial tools and benefits in terms of, the financial aspects of how you can achieve that at a less costly rate. So diving right on in. So typically we kind of have a few different groups of people who come together to really help with making sure that a home is energy efficient and meeting the current guidelines. We have our energy advisors. We have mechanical designers that are coming on to the scene more and more that we're seeing. And then of course you have your design team, which is either, your interior designer, your architect, your general contractor, and all of those kinds of things. Elisabeth, from your perspective as someone who's coming to the table as the energy advisor, what's kind of your perspective on that? And then also how does that team of people really provide the best, I guess, product to the client?
Yeah, hi everyone. Happy to be here. Yeah, so we are energy advisors and we work closely with TQ Construction on projects. And really what's important for us is, of course, the energy checklist is part of any building permit right now for any new construction and some renovations in the city of Vancouver. And we'll talk about that more after. But what's important is we're not just one item on that checklist. We actually like to be hired super early in the process. So when we first meet with the whole design team, design and build team, and the homeowners, we can understand, what's their vision for this either renovation or new construction, and how we can incorporate some energy efficiency measures beyond what is required already or beyond what is required. And it might get very technical sometimes, but it's also what we care about on top of just making the home the most energy efficient is also making it more comfortable. And oftentimes this is not often a link that people make, but the more energy efficient a home will be, the more comfortable it will be for the homeowners living in it. So that's that. I like to say that we sell comfort, and that's how we come in early in the design process.
And then you also work alongside mechanical designers to try and make that a little bit of a more efficient process, not just taking into consideration like the energy calculations and what the different options are, but then you're working with other professionals as well to try and really tighten up that process and that system.
Yeah, that's right. Is by making our homes more energy efficient, we usually have a better building envelope, more airtight, more insulated, and that means that we will rely much less on mechanical systems to heat the home, which means we'll be able to have smaller mechanical systems, save on costs right there, and have them running more efficiently throughout the year. And that is what the mechanical designer will be doing alongside us. Is we have all the technical specs for the building envelope, the windows, and they will come in and look at what mechanical systems would make sense for heating, cooling, hot water, ventilation. And the very important part is sizing. So what type of ducting system we want, what size of ducting, and how we incorporate this very early in the design. All the designers will say this is great when we know ahead of time where the ducting is going to go, because we don't have those surprises where, oh, but no, this was a high ceiling and this was looking great in our plans, and now we have to drop this ceiling or something. So
Yeah.
why we like to work super early in identifying where ducting is going to go and what size and how we can incorporate all of that, making sure we select the right mechanical systems too.
Yeah, we've had that experience a few times now, and it's becoming more important even in like municipalities like Vancouver, where they're trying to really maximize the amount of like electrical you're doing versus gas and all of that, and really also trying to manage like your electrical panel sizes and whatnot. So
Yeah.
then moving into what does energy efficiency really encompass? And I think we've covered some of that a little bit already, but kind of going back into like what is it really? It's kind of touching on the main things of, using less energy to run and maintain your home, emitting fewer greenhouse gases and reducing your carbon footprint, which is kind of like, that it's good for the environment side of things, which, is great, fantastic. And that, it's achieved through a variety of methods. It's not just achieved through, throwing more insulation in your home or having fewer windows or just having a crazy mechanical system. It's kind of figuring out like that perfect symbiotic relationship. Is that kind of a fair assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. It's we like to think as a house as a system, like we say. So every single component that goes into the house will have an impact through insulation, windows, what type of windows do we want, what thermal values, if we want to take advantage of the sun and get some solar gain from those windows, like we explore all of those options. As well as shading. And one thing that we see a lot more as well right now is the cooling aspect. So we used to never need cooling in the summer, but now we do, and that's going to become more and more prominent. So how do we integrate all of that and the lifestyle of the homeowners and the family, like how they want to live, how they, if they open the windows all the time in the summer, is it because they want the fresh air? We can do that with mechanical systems and prevent, wildfire smoke to come into the house. So there's a lot of considerations that are, everything is tied together about the envelope, the mechanical systems, and everything that goes around the house.
And we're obviously seeing different as the years are going on. So I mean, all of this kind of we started looking at a lot of this step code stuff back in, oh, I feel like it was like 2018 or 2020.
2017.
Yeah, it started to really kind of make the scene, especially in British Columbia. And so do you see like a lot of difference between like what's required on a national level, provincial level into I think we see the most difference between a provincial level and a municipal level, and then kind of expanding a little bit on what those requirements typically kind of look like for homeowners.
Yeah, so the step code was so we have a national building code that then is adopted at the provincial level, and the energy step code came from the province in 2017 originally with those targets that you see here on the screen, making basically new construction more and more efficient as we go towards 2032. And then what the province said at the time was this is our timeline, the dates that you see here, but if any local government wants to fast track this timeline, then they are able to do so. And so some municipalities, especially the ones in the lower mainland, the North Shore, have decided that they want to move ahead a bit faster than the provincial timeline. So that means that they are implementing the step code in their municipality with more stringent requirements, which means they might be already looking at step 5 on the North Shore ahead of 2032. And what that means that homes will be, like you see on the right, a lot more energy efficient, up to 80% more energy efficient than what would have been the base code. So the national, what's interesting is that the every update to the national code, the most recent, they actually took the concepts of the step code, because we have been doing this here in BC since 2017, and kind of took this idea of like tiered code to implement it at the national level. So this is now in place at the federal level for all other provinces, but in BC we've been already working with this since 2017, the very early adopters, and then like you said, since 2020, it's really been ramping up.
And then kind of the common methods of meeting those requirements, because I am not an energy specialist, but I do get to see the reports and everything. But it's essentially like a calculation, a mathematical crunch of the entire home and taking a bunch of things into consideration to kind of hit that target on that lovely little report that gets provided for the city. And it takes the mechanical systems and the building envelope, and then also just like design features such as like awnings over your windows to stop as much sun coming in and all of those things. So would you mind sharing with us a little bit of your experience in terms of like how all of that fits together from like a technical perspective?
I'll spare you the boring technical software details, so that's no fun. But yes, in a nutshell, we take into account all the insulation, roof underneath the slab. We take into account windows, what type, the dimensions, and all mechanical systems for heating, cooling, ventilation, domestic hot water. If there's solar panels as well, this is something that we take into account. And we crunch some numbers in the software, and that tells us whether the home is going to meet the target. So if the home meets the target right away, then we usually generate the compliance reports right away, and that's fairly straightforward. That's required for building permit. And if the home doesn't meet the target, then we will be looking at some alternative options. So maybe we'll beef up those assemblies here and the envelope, or we'll just change those windows, or we'll incorporate a bit of both, and make mechanical systems more efficient. So there is just a lot of options that we can work with. And like I said, it's a house of a system. So when we integrate, a better performing window, for example, we might need less insulation. Everything works together. And we are able to kind of play with the options there.
And then when we look at requirements that are coming, because we did talk about a little bit how like year by year things are gonna, or every few years, ramp up a little bit. So I know like the fun term in BC is net zero ready, and we'll talk a little bit about more of what like net zero is. But is that kind of where everything's leading to, or do you see other requirements coming in that are kind of even more above and beyond the net zero ready? Especially, I'm thinking at municipal levels, like in the city of Vancouver, and I'm not sure if other ones are going to be adopting some additional energy sort of requirements in the next few years.
Yeah, I think this is where we are heading for sure. we'll talk about certifications, but without even talking certifications, we call them high performance homes. So a high performance home is a home that's been designed and built to be durable, energy efficient, that use, good quality materials and a good efficient mechanical systems. So overall, this is definitely something we'll see more of. Like gone are the days when there was just no insulation in the walls, and we know that that was also very uncomfortable, right? So the homes are just going to become more and more comfortable, resilient to also either cold snaps or heat domes that we see more often, unfortunately, and just more resilient and durable thanks to those energy efficiency upgrades. So net zero is a term that we use a lot in terms of and maybe if you want to go to the next one already and talk about certification, because I like to make the distinction that net zero is a label from the Canadian Home Builders Association. So it is
Mm-hmm.
a label that can be used for any home in Canada, and that basically means that the home uses as much energy as it can generate on site on a yearly basis. So
So
some
could it effectively be off grid, I guess would be like a layman's term or a more common term for it. Is that it like it could effectively run off of the
It
energy that
could
it
it could
produces?
run off grid, yes.
Yeah.
In the city of Vancouver or in the Lower Mainland where we are connected to the grid, it's basically when you generate a lot, then you send it back to the grid, and then when you need it, you have the grid connected so you can and it balances out. The most important is that it balances out at the end of the year. And that's in the city of Vancouver, for example, one of the options to get an extra density bonus. So the city of Vancouver has recognized that this is a standard that is trustworthy and worth pursuing, and so they will give you extra square footage if you pursue this standard, which we have seen actually quite a lot recently.
Yeah, I mean every square inch counts seems to me these days.
Definitely.
Yeah. And then what about some of the other ones that we're kind of talking about here where we're looking at like zero carbon building standards and low carbon materials sort of things. I know that I think one thing that I've heard touched on, and I think you know more about it than I do that I find very interesting, which has to do with like the carbon life cycle of the building. So it's not just about like even just like the life cycle of the building. It's about like all the materials that go into the building and the creation of those materials. I find that particular aspect of what might be getting applied to the building industry very interesting. And I was hoping you could expand on that a little bit for us.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So the on here, the zero carbon building standard is a standard that comes from the Living Building Institute in the US, and that takes into account, like you're saying, takes a life cycle lens to how we look at greenhouse gas emissions in buildings, and that ties into the low carbon materials. So over the entire life cycle of a building, before the family even moves in, like there are some greenhouse gas emissions that have been emitted from just manufacturing those materials, driving them to the job site, even the construction process. And
Mhm.
another thing that is more and more considered now is what happens at the end of life of this house. So we see a lot of homes that are being demolished, but some of those homes have actually very good lumber in them. So can we deconstruct, reuse some of those materials? It has so many benefits that we don't have enough time to get into, but from a perspective of more of a circular economy, can we reuse those materials to first not have to make them from scratch, which uses a lot of energy and efforts and greenhouse gas emissions, but also cost from a cost perspective as well, and durability. So the 2x4s that were made in the 1910s were much stronger than the ones made now, and it's kind of
Much
a
denser,
waste.
yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a waste to throw those away, and in my opinion, lumber should never end in landfill. That's such a waste. But there are practices around using materials that have less of an impact on the environment, plus reusing some of those materials and incorporating kind of a secondhand market.
Yeah, it's actually it's interesting. It's a bit of a side note, but I've actually noticed over the last, I don't know, probably about the last year that a lot of low rise, like we were seeing a lot of low rise multifamily residential going a lot more concrete over the last 10 years from like buildings that I saw that were just going up. A lot of it was just like concrete and steel stud framing. And I've actually noticed over the last year or so, since I originally heard about some of this, some of it from you, some of it from other members of our team, that a lot of the low rise is starting to go up in wood frame again,
Yeah.
which is just I think it's super cool, and I think it's nice that we're like considering those things again because there's also a lot of aspects where a wood frame building is a lot easier to modify if need be in the future, whether you're renovating in your unit or the building as a whole. You don't have to like go and cut a bunch of concrete open, and there's
Yeah,
just
and
so many benefits.
so many benefits, and concrete is a very high carbon material. So I always say the less concrete we use, the better in terms of purely greenhouse gas emissions. And that's a solution for now. Maybe there will be more innovative concrete materials coming up with different, like there is all kinds of bio-based hempcrete and those type of new innovative materials coming up that I'm very excited about. But concrete still today remains, the material that we use the most of, but
Give
there
it give it
are
5 to 10 years. We're gonna go back to like pounded or
yeah, yes, and straw.
And speaking of benefits, and again, we've touched on some of these already through other aspects of the webinar, but benefits for the homeowners because again, it's great and dandy to talk about why things are required, but especially kind of touching on the above and beyond aspect of like things that you can do above what the current requirements are, or even the requirements that are coming up in the next 10 years. Why do people go above those? And like you said, it often has to do with comfort. So things like, you have your temperature control in all of your seasons. Your home isn't gaining or losing a lot of heat in either direction. So, you're nice and toasty in the winter and cool in the summer as we like to be. And then your air quality is fantastic because whether you have asthma or you have pets or just a busy life with a lot of dust or you're trying to avoid smoke outside, it basically helps control that in a huge way. It also helps increase the general value of your home in terms of like the long term because, it's a great selling feature. It also lowers some of your utility bills in terms of like a long lasting side effect of having an energy efficient home. And then, like you were mentioning before, it also kind of brings together the concept of, durability and making homes kind of a long-term investment again, opposed to something that was kind of like short-term and a flip. Would you kind of agree with some of that?
Yeah, 100%. Everything you listed is so true. I mean, we've all experienced sitting next to a window and in the winter and just feeling cold and drafty. And I actually experienced this while I was traveling over the Christmas holidays, where there was like a gap underneath the window and there was just -10 air flowing in. And this is not happening anymore in our buildings in BC, thank God, because this is very uncomfortable. So the temperature control is huge. Having, like constant temperature and controlled all over the house, whatever that is for, a specific room, won't be as impacted from the outside world. And the air quality control is also becoming a lot more important with the wildfire seasons that we have, being able to control what air is coming inside the house and filtering this air. Increase home value, and I like to say future proofing, because we know that the energy code is going there. So if we are building a home today, do we want to be building the home of the past, or do we want to be building the home of the future? And really, there is nothing scary in building a high performance energy efficient home. We've done a lot of projects where it's very about being smart in the design and incorporating those things early on, and then talking about it and making sure we're all aligned. But that will lead to, for sure, low utility bills. We've seen projects with less than $100 a month in hydro bills on an all electric home with heat pumps and about 1,200 square feet. So very, very low utility bills, even better if you have solar panels on. And durability is huge in terms of paying attention to having a home that's airtight, that has, the proper materials in the proper places. That's something that will make the home, much more durable in the long term, less mold, less airflow, which lead to mold, less condensation and issues like that. So those are side benefits of an energy efficient home.
And I would say, like, we've been talking about energy efficiency largely in the context of like new homes, but I've also seen a lot of it applied to renovated homes, and especially like largely renovated homes where, the simple, easy one that a lot of people think about is like getting new windows and getting a heat pump and things like that. But we've seen a lot of things applied to renovations as well, where we're seeing a lot of similar benefits.
Yeah, 100%. We can reach the very high performance on renovations. Again, when we think about some of the things we can do early in the process. Yes, changing windows is kind of an easy one, but that also comes to if we have much better windows, how does that impact the rest of the house? So we have to think about that. Again, the house as a system. Once you move one thing, then you might impact the other elements of the home. So we try to
Yeah,
look at that for sure.
because older homes are definitely not. It's a bit of a like, where do you start? Where do you stop? How do you make it all fit in like a graceful way that works properly? Because older homes weren't designed that way. Like older homes were
Exactly. Yeah.
designed like they depended on the fact that they breathed a little bit. So it's kind of like,
Hmm.
okay, well, how do you get a more energy efficient home in a renovation? It's much easier to do in a large renovation where you're basically gutting the home and redoing all of the insulation and everything.
Yeah, definitely. And there is all types of performance we can achieve through a renovation when we plan it properly or new construction. So there's just lots of options.
Yeah. And then taking on any of those options obviously have costs associated with them, as does everything these days. It's wonderful. Life has gotten so expensive. Um, but there's also some financial tools to kind of help. It doesn't really cover everything, but it definitely helps and makes, the initial bitter pill of, doing the work a little bit easier to swallow. So I know that there's, some government interest-free financing programs that are out there. Everybody hears about the rebates on the radio every year from BC Hydro and Fortis, like clockwork. And then, there's obviously the benefit, the long-term benefit or cost of running and maintaining your home, which you've talked about, which is insane. Like the concept of having a full home, which is presumably 3,000 or 4,000 square feet, running off of a very minor electrical bill is just bananas to me. That's fantastic. So, but particularly on the first two, do you see a lot of success with those two and helping homeowners?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of programs over the years that help install heat pumps. We hear a lot here, you're right, on the radio, the heat pump rebates. And those are great to help homeowners who, might need that little extra cash or extra financial ability to do that, because all of those energy efficiency upgrades, they will pay off in the long run. So for sure, capital cost is huge right now with interest rates so high. We always think about right now, but sometimes one energy efficiency upgrade will make a whole difference in the long run as well. So it's all about balancing the capital costs now and the operational costs in the future.
Yeah, and I always make a point of reminding people that, if it obviously comes down to like what can you afford, but there's that underlying factor of like nothing is getting less expensive to do over
Hmm.
time. So like if it's a matter of like, do we do the heat pump now or do we do the heat pump in 5 years? Or do we upgrade something in 5 or 10 years? Like if you can afford to do it now, it's the better investment to do it now because A, it'll cost less. Almost anything will cost less. There's a few exceptions to the rule. I would say maybe solar panels might be kind of one of them that I've kind of seen. It might be evening out now. Um, but for the most part, things aren't getting cheaper. Like labor is not getting cheaper. The cost of living is not getting cheaper. The cost of creating these materials are not getting cheaper. Like I said, there's a few exceptions to the rule, but generally speaking, it's not going to cost less to do in 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, that's totally right. And sometimes it's good to phase things. So there are also energy efficiency upgrades that make sense early, like air sealing and insulation. Like do that before you even upgrade your heat pump because you will need then a smaller heat pump to run your heating and cooling. So definitely do those upgrades before investing in a large, big mechanical system.
Yeah. And that, everybody, brings us back kind of around full circle. So, kind of to recap again, kind of everything that we went over today. So, talking about, the professionals that are involved in the entire process. What does energy efficiency encompass as like a whole ideal, as a concept? What's required now? How do we achieve that? What kind of requirements are coming? What does it look like when you go kind of above and beyond what the energy requirements are? And then kind of going through, how it benefits homeowners and their families, as well as how you can kind of achieve that with some financial tools and benefits. Thank you so much for your time this evening, Elisabeth, and helping us kind of walk through all of this. This is our question and answer kind of period of the evening, where Judith will kind of jump back in with us and help us monitor the questions. And if anybody has their hand raised, are there any questions for us this evening?
Right now, we don't have any questions, Megan and Elizabeth. I'm not sure if somebody wants to ask anything before we leave.
Did we have a comment somewhere in the chat? I thought I saw something pop up, but I wasn't 100% sure.
No, no,
Okay,
Megan, there is not comments over there.
perfect. Okay. Well, if anybody does have any follow-up
Hello?
questions that you can, oh, yeah. Hello?
Yeah, actually, yes. I'm a student of Masters in Energy Management from New Institute of Technology, Vancouver.
Uh-huh.
So, actually, recently, I just want to know any new innovative technologies for energy efficiency buildings envelopes. So, any new innovative technology has recently launched for if we can make our building more energy efficient?
There's a lot we could talk about. It depends on what you mean by innovative technologies. I think that we know how to make our buildings energy efficient now. We have all the technology available. What I see coming more of something that's coming back, like you said, Megan, is like more of the bio-based low carbon materials. I think we'll see a lot of innovation in this space in the coming years, just to build with better materials.
Oh, okay, thank you.
We're coming into getting like the same result, but with more like environmentally friendly. Yeah. We did mention at the beginning of the webinar, it has been recorded. It will be posted, and there will be a link sent out in the next couple of days. If you have any questions that come up, or if you'd like to meet with our team, please feel free to sign up for a consultation, and we'll be more than happy to start a conversation and, go down that path. We do have another webinar coming up in March, on March 26th, same time, same place, 6:30. We would love to see many of you there as well. We have not selected a topic yet. It is coming. You will see it in the lovely newsletter that we send out. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you guys there. Thank you so much, everybody, tonight. And I hope you have a great evening.
Thank you. Have a good evening.